This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Hi, I'm Seth.
And I'm Patrick.
Chapter 17 of Fires of Heaven, heading west, and our symbol is the Shreddit face, or the elephant face.
Kind of looks like a pissed off Shreddit in that, now that I look at it a little closer.
The chapter icon looks sort of mean.
Like, look at those eyes. They're not, like, big and wide. Yeah, he does look kind of mean. Never really noticed that before. Which is funny, because the Shreddit in the chapter are just the cutest, friendliest little things.
Ch17 and Shreddit seem huge, but I don't really have any good sense of scale when Nynaeve says something like its tusk was as thick around as a man's leg. Is that big for an elephant, or...?
I would assume standard elephant size, like African elephant. Because aren't there two? There's African and Asian elephants, and I think the African elephants are the ones we think of as being the big tusked elephants with the big ears. And that's certainly what's in the chapter header.
They're bigger and can't be domesticated, as opposed to the Asian one, which is a little smaller and nicer, apparently. When the serving girl came with the bonnets, Elaine was stretched out on one of the beds in a white silk shift, a damp cloth over her eyes, and Nynaeve was pretending to mend the hem of the pale green dress that Elaine had been wearing. As often as not, she stuck her thumb. She would never have admitted it to anyone, but she was not very good at needlework. She wore her dress, of course. Maids did not loll about like ladies, but she did have her hair hanging loose. Clearly, she had no intention of leaving the room any time soon. She thanked the girl in a whisper, so as not to wake her lady, and pressed another silver penny on her, with a repeated injunction that her lady was not to be disturbed on any account. As soon as the door clicked shut, Elaine bounded to her feet and began pulling their bundles out from under the beds. Nynaeve tossed the silk gown down and twisted her arms behind her to undo her buttons. In no time at all, they were ready. Nynaeve in green wool, Elaine in blue, with the bundles on their backs. Nynaeve carried the scrip with her herbs and the money. Elaine, the blanket-wrapped boxes. The deep curving brins of the bonnets hid their faces so well that Nynaeve thought they could have walked right by Galad without him knowing them. Especially with her hair down. He would remember the braid. Mistress Jaren, however, might well stop two strange women coming with fat bundles from upstairs. The back stairs ran down the outside of the inn, narrow stone flights clinging to the wall. Nynaeve felt a moment of sympathy for Tom and Julian, hauling the heavy chests up these, but mainly her attention was on the stable yard and the slate-roofed stone stable. A yellow dog lay in the shade beneath the coach, sheltering from the already increasing heat. But all of the grooms were inside. Now and again she could see some movement beyond the open stable doors, but no one came out. It was shady in there, too. They trotted quickly across the stable yard to the alley between the stable and a tall stone fence. A full dung cart, swarming with flies and scarcely narrower than the alleyway, was rumbling by. Nynaeve suspected that the glow of Saidar surrounded Elaine, though she could not see it. She herself was hoping that the dog did not decide to bark, that no one came out of the kitchens or the stable. Using the power was no way to sneak off quietly, and talking their way clear would leave traces for Galad to follow. The rough wooden gate at the end of the alley had only a lift latch, and the narrow street beyond, lined with simple stone houses and more thatched roofs than otherwise, was empty except for a handful of boys playing some game that seemed to involve hitting each other with a beanbag. The only adult in sight was a man feeding a cote of pigeons on a roof opposite, his head and shoulders up through a trap door. Neither he nor the boys more than glanced at them as they shut the gate and started along the winding street, as if they had every right to be there. They had walked a good 5 miles west of Sienda, along the dusty road before Tom and Julian caught up. Tom was driving what looked like a tinker's wagon, save that it was all one color, a drab green, with the paint flaked off in large patches. Nynaeve was grateful to stuff her bundles under the driver's seat and climb up beside him, but not so pleased to see Julian riding Skulker. "I told you not to go back to the inn," she told him, vowing to hit him with something if he looked at Tom. "I did not go back," he said, unaware that he had saved himself a sore head. "I told the head stableman that my lady wanted berries fresh from the country, and Tom and I had to go fetch them. It's the sort of nonsense that some He cut off, clearing his throat, as Elaine gave him a cool, expressionless look from the other side of Tom. Sometimes he forgot that she really was of royalty. I liked that. Fresh berries from the country, it does kind of sound likely, that...
Oh, sure. We see nobles do that kind of like if you have someone working for you who has nothing to do, you can just send them off on certain tasks.
You can't tell rich privileged people that there is no difference. Listen, all berries are fresh. If it's not fresh, it's rotted. So there's really no point going all the way out there.
Well, maybe.
They only last like a week or two off the... Well, I'm thinking of...
I suppose. We have refrigeration, so that does change things a little bit. Or a lot, really.
We see a little bit of intrigue here from Tom. He's saying, I learned from last night also that Pedro Neal is clearly trying to unite the nations against Rand. Nynaeve doesn't believe it, but this is Tom, of course.
Of course. Well, and he's putting together... Remember how Pedro Nile comes up with those, 4 separate rumors that he and Belwar spread?
Loose the lion.
Those are the same 4 rumors that Tom has put together to realize, oh, yeah, these 4 rumors are totally just bullshit that Pedro Nile's been putting out. Because everyone's saying the same thing.
His plan to loose the lion on the people, and then they'll clamor to be saved, and he'll swoop in and do it. The lion being the dragon.
Yeah.
Or this false dragon, as Pedro Neal sees it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a false dragon, the fellow is dangerous, the nations ought to unite, and who better than Pedro Nile? Right? Those are the 4 separate rumors that Tom has put together to be this is Pedro Nile saying this, because nobody else.
Yeah.
He's the only one with the authority to make these rumors happen, essentially.
Discord is asking the name of the Shreddit trainer. And here at the end of the chapter, she's referring to herself as Sarandon. Cerandin.
Yeah.
Is that her real name, or is that an assumed name? I don't remember, to be honest.
I think that's her real name. Once she realizes that she's caught, she's like, yeah, that's my name. It's my Sean Chen name. And I don't think she ever changes it. I think that's always her name. Yeah,
I mean, no real reason to.
And clearly Val and Luca's covering up. Val and Luca knows she's from Sean Chan. He's lying. He, made up the story about the Shara origin.
Right. Elaine seems to think that Morghese will support Rand, and, of course, debating about whether she would or wouldn't is pretty much useless, because she's, in a couple chapters here, no longer the Queen of Andor.
And right now, she's not really the Queen of Andor anyway.
In name only, yeah.
Ravine is, yeah. And there's a couple of, again, Nynaeve perspective of some of my favorite quotes. Men could be blind when it suited them, which is Nynaeve, of course, only sees the things that she wants to see. And then that was another thing men did, make excuses to do exactly what they wanted. And then Nynaeve proceeds to make excuses. Yeah, it's everybody does that, not just men. Stop blaming men. It's everybody. Nynaeve is, she likes to blame men for stuff that everybody does.
Oh, that's so peppered in throughout the series. Each gender is always
totally. I just like pointing it out.
All the boys are women are perplexing, and the girls are men are idiots, and it just happens till the end. It never gets fixed or anything.
No, that's just what we think about each other.
This reminds me of when we were recording Mistborn the other day. Oh, as Kelsier is talking to the Shadow People, he finds out that there are humans on other planets that are made by other gods, and his mind's getting blown. And he's like, so did our gods just mess us up, and that's why this place is messed up? And the Shadow People are like, no, humans are just always like that.
No,
it doesn't really matter where you go in the universe.
We're built on a flawed original model, basically.
Great, so we're bad copies of a flawed original. I get it. I see now.
Yes.
In any case, I thought it was slightly interesting that, as Elaine is saying, Mother will support Rand. Elaine said, I know she will. She knows the prophecies, and she has just as much influence as Pedro Neal. The slight shake of Tom's head denied the last, at least. Morghese ruled a wealthy nation, but there were white cloaks in every land, and from every land.
That does make them incredibly powerful.
I thought it was interesting that Tom doubted that Morghese was as powerful as Pedro Neal.
Especially considering Camelin is probably the most powerful of all the individual nations.
Yeah, and Andor is almost certainly the most powerful and Camelin one of the richest cities. But Morghese doesn't control a giant stateless army. You know, her armed forces are in Andor, not outside of it.
True. Yeah, and it is very nation-based, yeah.
Which I think is what the narrator's trying to say here.
The narrator, is that Tom?
I think it's just kind of narrator at that point, because there's no reason Nynaeve should know that these things.
I think it's Nynaeve interpreting what Tom's saying.
Could be.
Because she's saying, oh, I got to pay more attention to Tom. He's actually a little clever here. Like, he kind of knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Which is rare that Nynaeve gives any man any credit for figuring anything out. So that's actually pretty impressive.
Pretty much just Tom and Lan, so that's a real high bar.
We call it it's really a high braid that Nynaeve holds people to.
Ha.
I got a honk.
Just the single ha.
Just the single ha. It wasn't worth a double ha. Not a ha. Are we at Val and Luca yet?
Yes.
Do you want to read his little introduction here? I kind of like it.
Sure. Nynaeve and the others had all climbed down before Val and Luca appeared, still in that ridiculous red silk cape. There were no flowery speeches this time, no cape-swirling bows. His eyes widened when he recognized Tom and Julian, narrowed at the box-like wagon behind them. He bent to peer into the deep bonnets, and his smile was not pleasant. So, come down in the world, have we, my Lady Morellin? Or maybe we were never up at all. Stole a coach and some clothes, did you? Well, I would hate to see such a pretty forehead branded. That is what they do here, in case you don't know. If they do not do worse. So, since it seems you've been found out, else why are you running, I would suggest you hurry on as fast as you can. If you want your bloody penny back, it's somewhere up the road. I threw it after you, and it can lie there until Tarman Gaidon for all I care. You wanted a patron? Nynaeve said, as he was turning away. We can be your patrons. You? He sneered, but he stopped. Even if a few coins stolen from some lord's purse would help us, I would not accept stolen... We will pay your expenses, Master Luca, Elaine broke in with that coolly arrogant tone of hers, and 100 gold marks besides, if we can travel with you to Gildan, and if you agree not to stop until you reach the border. Luca stared at her, running his tongue over his teeth. You stole that much? Luca said cautiously. I'm skipping a little bit. Who's after you? My brother, Elaine replied before Nynaeve could angrily deny that they had stolen anything. It seems that a marriage has been arranged while I was away, and my brother was sent to find me. I have no intention of returning to Cairhien to marry a man a head shorter, 3 times my weight and thrice my age. Her cheeks colored in only a fair imitation of anger.
I think she's a little embarrassed that she's lying there.
She expands the story a little bit, and it's quite a good story, actually.
Very good story. Well, and the rest of it is true, right? You know, she switches from false story to true story pretty much right after that statement. And I guess technically that is true. She has no intention of marrying a bald, fat old man.
Yes. And she does say, like, my father has dreams of claiming the Sun Throne if he can gain enough support. My dreams concern a red-haired Anderman, whom I shall wed, whatever my father says. And there's, like, a lot of truth mixed into that. But Luca will interpret it in a different way.
Exactly, yeah. Well, and her father, who is now dead, did at one point want the Sun Throne.
Yep.
Until Tom killed him. Yay, Tom. And it is funny, there's a little bit of flirting that goes on between, like, Luca and Nynaeve. And despite we see Nynaeve discouraging him that whole time, like, she's very flattered, and Luca is a very handsome man.
Yeah, I'm not convinced I understand the dynamic.
I'm not sure either, but I have to wonder if she hadn't met Lan, if maybe she'd be a little more open to his.
We have joked about that before. I can't remember if it was on a recording or off while we were just chatting with listeners, but just that Luca is into being told what to do, maybe?
Somebody once told me that Luca was going to roll me. He ain't the sharpest tool in the shed.
Huh. Luca says, like, well, okay, show me the money if you really have that much. And he says, all right, whether you stole that or not, you are still running from someone, and I won't risk my show, whether it's the army of some Cairhienan lord or worse, but you'll have to blend in, and basically says, like, so you're going to have to act like performers if we're going to hide you here.
And at this point, he uses his opportunity to take the revenge for the shitty pay. He's like, yeah, you're going to have to shovel shit if you want to travel with me, is basically what he says to them. And Tom's like, well, maybe not. I, if you haven't noticed, am a gleeman.
Yes, he does the thing. And he starts juggling a little, and he's like, yeah, we have jugglers. And then he, like, does some crazy, impossible stuff, and he's like, all right, maybe I could find a use for you, but what about the others?
All right, the 6 became 8, then 10, then a dozen?
A dozen.
Uh-huh. Can I tell you how many people in the world can juggle a dozen items?
Only Tom Maryland.
Can you? Yeah. There is nobody real who can juggle a dozen items.
Nobody? I don't know. I really have no idea. It would be amazing to see.
The most balls juggled is 11 and was achieved by Alex Barron, who managed 23 consecutive catches. So he was able to throw and catch each ball twice with 11. That's the world record.
Wow.
So Tom just casually throws up a dozen. He just casually demonstrates
the world record.
Something the world record, yeah. So I'm just going to say, as I've said many times, Robert Jordan did not know how to juggle.
It's magic, dude.
No, it's not. That's the whole point. Is this is the one thing that's not magic. Yeah. That's why I'm upset about it. It's because it's not magic. This is just his ability to juggle, and it's just not realistically.
He is supposed to be exceptional.
Yeah. Well, let's just assume he's channeling, and moving on. And his insanity is his grandioseness.
Yeah. I mean, if we wanted to say, how much of this really reflects physics, yeah. I think we could find a lot more things that...
He can only channel when he juggles. He's got a block.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, fine. Headcanon. And then Elaine makes up the whole thing about being able to high walk because she realizes she can just put a path of air down and walk across it like it's a fucking road.
Walk a tightrope.
Yeah, here's my problem. Tightropes give. If you ever see anyone walking on a tightrope, there's a significant dip in the rope where they're standing.
Right.
And yet she creates a hard surface that she walks across, so there's not going to be any dip in that surface. And it's going to look totally different than someone walking an actual tightrope. It would be real weird. So, again... Did Jordan ever actually go to a circus? I gotta wonder about that sometimes. Or did he just is this what he thinks a circus?
I think you might be overthinking it.
I guess they are just looking at her legs, but...
She does a cartwheel across.
It would, it's not even she does a cartwheel across a solid surface. If you've ever seen one, you see people slackline all the time in the park, right? Sure. The line moves underneath you and goes side to side and bends and unless it's not a tight rope but a tight beam. Is it a hard beam across the entire way? Just a narrow.
It's not really described 100%, but I mean,
it's described a narrow rope.
Yeah,
she stepped out onto the narrow rope. A narrow rope is going to give. It just is.
Yeah, but using similar logic, we could tear down all kinds of things, an army of hundreds of thousands of people that can all run 40 to 50 miles a day. Fucking possible. No way. It's just not possible. Especially to do it for more than 1 or 2 days. There's they would have to all be Olympians, every single Aielman.
Yeah, fine. Maybe she's just up high enough and far enough away that you can't really tell. That's the only thing I can guess. But anyhow, moving on. Julian gets up there and does his I'm terrified because he's actually terrified.
Yes.
Act. Yeah.
And Luca's I like how you played that. It was funny. Doesn't he pretend to be drunk later as he becomes more confident?
Yeah, that's sort of the ending. He gets better at practicing and he actually practices tightrope.
Yeah. I was surprised that he wasn't a little more confident because Julian has a bit of that superhuman thing going too.
Well, and Julian's totally been up on roofs and doesn't have a problem with heights. My assumption is he was scared because the one power's involved. and he's not comfortable with the one power.
Oh, yeah, and you might be comfortable jumping from ledge to ledge and all, but when we're talking about walking across a rope that moves in the air, even if you're athletic, that's a special skill all its own.
And then I, of course, love Nynaeve's special skill that she is able to demonstrate.
And you, my dear Nana, what surprising talent do you have? Tumbling, perhaps? Swallowing swords? I dole out the money, she told him. Unless you want to offer me your wagon. She gave him a smile that wiped his away clean and backed him up 2 steps.
The smile of a predator.
She's referencing initially Luca was like, well, and he's like tells Elaine that if she wants to sleep in his carriage, then maybe he can figure out a deal, which is gross. But Nynaeve saying, I dole out the money, and unless you want me to be in your wagon, she's like, murder you in your sleep, creep.
And this is pre-married Luca. The next time they run into him, he has actually gotten married, which was that was a little detail I missed for a long time reading this. Is that like at some point after he leaves them, he gets married.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Leah, Matt runs into him at some point with Tuan. Are they all there at the same time, or do they just
who?
The girls and Matt and Tuan and
no. They're never at the circus at the same time.
Their paths just cross.
Yeah, same thing like Bail Domon. Like the girls are definitely meet Bail Domon, but they're not there on the ship.
Yeah,
So there's a couple of characters like that who, I wouldn't even call them secondary characters, but they're like on a second tier where there's all these primary characters, and then there are all the characters they run into, and they run into a lot. Like Bail Domon, Bornhald, like Morghese, like there's just a lot of these sort of secondary characters that form a framework between a lot of our other characters.
As we go forward, like over the next page, we see basically Nynaeve like observing the circus, and we see Aludra, the slender woman who is supposed to be an illuminator, and
who we all know is an illuminator because we remember her from Matt saving her back in the barn with Matt and Tom. It's actually interesting that Tom doesn't mention that he knows Aludra in this scene. He should remember her. He rescued her life in the barn. Remember that?
Was that with...
It's with Matt. And they get the fireworks.
Oh, that's right.
And then Matt uses the fireworks to blow his way into the Stone of Tyr.
I was thinking of Rand meets her too in Kyrien.
Yeah, he's the one who causes the warehouse to blow up.
Yeah, I think it's just him and Loyal at that point. Oh yeah, Rand was the reason she gets kicked out.
Yeah, totally. That idiot Tammuz.
Yes, thank you, Leia. Selene is there too, so Lanfear knows who Aludra is as well.
Not that Lanfear would bother to remember.
We see the 3 brothers in air quotes who are tumblers, but they are obviously not brothers. It's kind of interesting. There's like a Saldean, a guy with TFoH hand tattoos, and...
Yeah, Aludra's definitely one of those who gets caught in the Taviran twisting. Like, her life just gets totally thrown out of whack so that she can invent cannons for Matt. Because Matt needs cannons.
Rand shows up, and then stuff happens. Matt as well. She gets kind of spun off into Matt's spin.
Oh, totally. Yeah, definitely. I feel like Rand, of course, breaks the bonds, as he is wont to do. And then Matt is like, ooh, I can use those.
Leia says she gets kissy-kissy with Matt? That's a thing? I've forgotten that.
Oh, yeah, totally. She never sleeps with him, but he does, like, get her to kiss him. Yeah, definitely. There's that, like, and she's like, you may be kissing me, but you're not going to get my secrets. Like, it's that sort of relationship where he's, like, obviously trying to get information out of her, and she's like, nice try, buddy. I'll kiss you a little bit because you're a cutie. But, yeah, I mean, that's, it's easy to miss just how much of a slut Matt is. Like, he really does sleep with a lot of people.
I don't know that I would say that's easy to miss.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Oh, Matt. But then he's like suddenly monogamous after he meets that petite cutie, queen of half the world.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of, I want to say, cultural monogamy going on there, where like once he knows because of prophecy that he's going to marry this girl, and once he meet her, he kind of feels like looking at other people is cheating because of
he does
culture.
Go through some weird stuff with that.
Yeah, and you add on to the whole Thailand thing that goes on, that like he was sort of kind of monogamous with Thailand for the first time. First time he was really like monogamous with anyone, because she was like not letting him get his flirt on. So
not letting
like
him leave.
right. So there was this sort of like period of time before Tuon where he kind of was being way less slutty.
Leia says he doesn't stop looking, he just says he can't while he's looking.
Oh, totally.
Sounds like Matt. Sounds like everyone.
But he's not going to stop drinking or gambling.
We see Sarandon. We see, like, Petra, the strongman, Sarandon, the Shreddit trainer. And we got very short introductions to all these people who we'll be spending some time with.
I love that Nynaeve is snapping at Luca because she got all goggle-eyed over Galad. And she's like, I can't believe I got goggle-eyed over him, you good-looking man, how dare you make me feel stupid. Like, she's definitely projecting onto Val and Luca some of the anger she feels at Galad.
Although he is a creep. I mean, in a paragraph here, Elaine slaps him in the face.
Oh, totally.
And he whispers something in her ear that we don't hear.
Mm-hmm. Sweet nothings. I
really liked that Nynaeve goes over to Sarandon, and she's nice to her, but also, she says, so what are these animals really called? And she's petting the trunk of one of the elephants, and Shreddit, the pale-haired woman, said, they are Shreddit, but Master Luca thought a name more easily said was better. That drawling accent was unmistakable. Are there many Shreddit in Shanchan? Shanchan? Where's that? And she tries to play it off. The Shreddit are from Shara, as I am. I have never heard of... Perhaps you've seen Shara, Sarandon, but I doubt it. You are Shanchan. Unless I miss my guess, you are part of the invasion from Toman Head, left behind after Falma. And Elaine shows up and agrees.
And they spent a bunch of time with Aegeanin, which is how they are able to probably recognize the accent, because they didn't recognize Aegeanin's accent at first. Again, I think that's one of those really odd plot holes where I'm like, how did they recognize this woman's accent and not Aegeanin's? I guess just by spending a lot of time with Aegeanin. That's the only...
Leia was yelling at me a little bit. You're right, I shouldn't call them elephants, because we know it's something that looks like an elephant, but this could be, fantasy world elephant. Slightly different somehow or something.
Oh, it's a freaking elephant. Come on, I'll call it an elephant if because this is the same world as ours. It's the wheel. Like, we have the Mercedes-Benz, logo. It's definitely...
Yeah, but peaches are poisonous.
The same animals. But they're still peaches.
Are they? If they're poisonous? You know what I mean? Everything's a little different.
What if they're just poisonous for the people of the age? What if they're the same peaches that we eat?
But the people are different?
Mm-hmm. Or what if it's a myth? What if they're wrong? What if peaches aren't poisonous?
Could be true. As poisonous as a peach.
Which maybe it doesn't mean... Maybe she meant not poisonous. Maybe peaches aren't poisonous.
By saying as poisonous as a peach?
Yeah. If I said that, I'd be like, oh, that means it's sweet.
I suppose so.
Yeah, I don't really have... the only thing I'll say is I like Sarandon's storyline, that she goes from this sort of nothing timid person to this sort of very strong... There's a point where Nynaeve tries to bully her, and she's like, back off. As opposed to this person who's getting down on her knees and worshiping a noble woman. But Jordan likes to tell that story of these women who are really beat down and don't have a lot going on for them to sort of discover their power and decide that they're gonna take control of their lives and not let people push them around anymore. He does it with the kin a lot. He does it with Sarandon. Does it with a couple other groups as well.
Yeah. So they the two women confirm that Sarandon. They're like, we know you're lying. It's cool. We're not going to do anything. But we know you're from Shanchan. Sarandon let out a long sigh and sagged a little. It was as if a tension so old that she was no longer aware of it had gone. Very few people I have met know anything approaching the truth of the return, or Falma. I have heard 100 tales, each more fanciful than the last, but never the truth. As well for me, I was left behind, and many of the Seredded also. These 3 were all I could gather. I do not know what happened to the rest. The bull is Myrrh, the cow Sonnet, and the calf Nerin. She is not Sonnets. Is that what you did? Elaine asked. Train Sereddit? Or were you a Soldam? Nynaeve added before the other woman could speak. Sarandon shook her head. I was tested, as all girls are, but I could do nothing with the Adam. I was glad to be chosen to work with Sereddit. They are magnificent animals. You know a great deal to know of Suldam and Domine. I have encountered no one before who knows of them. She showed no fear, or perhaps it had been used up since finding herself abandoned in a strange land. Then again, maybe she was lying. The Shan-Shan were as bad as Amadicians when it came to women who could channel, perhaps worse. They did not exile or kill. They imprisoned and used, by means of a device called an Adam. Nynaeve was sure it must be some sort of Terengrial. A woman who had the ability to wield the one power could be controlled by another woman, a Soldam, who forced the Domine to use her talents for whatever the Shan-Shan wanted, even as a weapon. A Domine was no better than an animal, if a well-tended one, and they made Domine of every last woman found with the ability to channel, or the spark born in her. The Shan-Shan had scoured Toman Head more thoroughly than the tower had ever dreamed of. The mere thought of Adam and Soldam and Damane made Nynaeve's stomach churn. We know a little, she told Sarandon, but we want to know more. The Shan-Shan were gone, driven away by Rand. But that was not to say they would not return one day. It was a distant danger beside everything else they had to face. Yet just because you had a thorn in your foot did not mean a briar scratch on your arm would not fester eventually. You would do well to answer our questions truthfully. There would be time on the journey north. I promise that nothing will happen to you, Elaine added. I will protect you, if need be. The pale-haired woman's eyes shifted from one of them to the other, and suddenly, to Nynaeve's amazement, she prostrated herself on the ground in front of Elaine. You are a high lady of this land, just as you told Luca. I did not realize. Forgive me, high lady. I submit myself to you. And she kissed the ground in front of Elaine's feet. Elaine's eyes looked ready to leap out of her face. Nynaeve was sure she was no better. Get up, she hissed, looking around frantically to see if anyone was watching. Luca was, curse him, and Latrell, still wearing that scowl. But there was nothing to be done. Get up! The woman did not stir. Stand on your feet, Sarandon, Elaine said. No one requires people to behave that way in this land, not even a ruler. Sarandon scrambled erect. She added, I will teach you the proper way to behave in return for your answers to our questions. The woman bowed, hands on her knees and head down. Yes, high lady, it will be as you say. I am yours. Nynaeve sighed heavily. They are going to have a fine time traveling to Gildan. Fine indeed.
Very fine time.
Stop kissing the dirt!
Get up!
What are you doing?
I will say, I did read that article today that was like, Wheel of Time, diversity casting the way it should be, and like it said like, Robert Jordan pictured all his characters as white, and I was like, no, he really didn't.
It's like real obvious if you just read the freaking books.
It really, really bugged me. I was like, you guys know.
Although, something that I did like about his writing is that he doesn't make a big deal out of it. He, like, mentions on a one or two, maybe 2 or 3 times in the whole series that Tuan, he, like, describes her roughly, you know? And it's that she has, like, dark skin and whatever. And it's just not really... He doesn't spend time saying, like,
characteristic.
Oh, she's really black, though. Just so you know, she's black. Like, you don't have to... You know what I mean? That would make it weird, as it would... in real life. Like, you don't have to point out that people, like, everyone can see. You know? And he answered a lot of like open questions like that. Like, what do you mean you don't know? Did you read the book? it was pretty common that he would,
Mm-hmm.
It's in there. Just read harder.
Right. And as we're discovering, that's true for so fucking many things that Jordan did. Like, we're finding things that are in the books that we just didn't realize for a long time, I think.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
I guess what I'm saying is that because he doesn't spend a lot of time driving the point home, I feel like a lot of people
in there once
miss it, and of course they do, because it's very easy. I didn't realize that Tuan was dark-skinned until I think my second read-through. I sort of had a revelation, like, oh, this is a description of, like, an African-looking person.
I want to say it took me way more Well, it's tough, because she's not introduced super early on, so I'd read the books a lot of times before she was introduced as a character.
Oh, sure. I mean, first or second full read-through, I kind of realized. I think I had always sort of imagined her as just, like, darker-skinned, but if you read the couple of descriptions closely...
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?